I'm standing outside this station. Like all stations on this line when it originally opened in 1954, this combination of tile colors uniquely identifies the station, and there was a pattern to how the tile colors were used. Let's find out more. This is St. Clair Station, yellow tiles with green accents. It's been over 70 years since this line opened, and in that time most of the original stations have lost their original tile colors due to renovations, but this one is an exception. Here are the original and current tile patterns and colors for all the original stations. Let's find out more. The original plans were for 4 main tile colors: primrose, pearl gray, jade, and shell pink. I'm approximating the colors as best I can. Plans changed because there were pricing and availability issues, so pink and jade were dropped. A shade of tan was in the running at one point, but it was also dropped. In the end, a different shade of green called English Eggshell was chosen, and there we have the 3 main tile colors. There were 4 tile colors chosen for the band at the top of the wall: American Red, Forest Green, Cadet Blue, and Black. 3 main tile colors times 4 accent tile colors gives 12 combinations, and there were 12 stations on the original subway line. Have a look at these 2 panels, each starting with Union at the bottom left and going left to right across each line before going up. The patterns are obvious. By cycling through each sequence, every station gets its own unique combination. If you just learned the 2 sequences and used logic, you could determine which station you were at by the color pattern. For subway users who are not Mr. Spock, though, that's not very practical. And there were probably a lot of people who never even noticed the pattern, but it was there. The original tiles were made of a material called vitrolite, which had been popular in the early 20th century and particularly in the Art Deco era. It's a type of glass, it's bright and shiny, and the light penetrating into the colored glass can give a lovely depth to its colors. Unfortunately, for use in the subway, it proved less than durable, and on top of that, it was on its way out of production at around the time this line opened. Ultimately, it's only been retained as part of the decor at Eglinton Station. All the other stations on the original line have received new finishes during renovations. But there are some other stations where the new finishes were installed over top of the existing vitrolite, and sometimes the original tiles reappear when the new finishes have been removed for work, like in these photos from College and Osgood. And if you ride the Toronto subway, you know that many stations seem to be in a never-ending state of having finishes removed for work, so keep your eyes peeled and at some point you might see the original tiles. The next line to open was the extension up University Avenue to St. George in 1963, with 6 new stations. Like Yonge, some of the stations have lost their original designs over the years, but there were originally unique combinations of colors and materials. Heading north from Union, the first 2 stations are St. Andrew and Osgood, and this pair used leftover vitrolite tiles. Presumably the colors were chosen based on either which spare tiles the TTC had in sufficient quantity, or what was still available. Remember, manufacturers were dropping vitrolite. Both stations have had their designs changed at least once due to renovations. Next we have St. Patrick and Queen's Park, both of which have circular walls because unlike other stations which were constructed by digging down from the surface, a method known as cut and cover, they were constructed by boring a tunnel. It's possible to use tiles on a curved wall, but it's probably easier and cheaper to do what they did instead: painted panels. And finally, Museum in St. George used ceramic tiles, which proved both more durable and more available than vitrolite. As you can see, the accent color didn't follow a consistent pattern, but there's a 3-color cycle for the main color, and each station had a unique combination of color and material, so Mr. Spock could still calculate which station he was visiting. Fascinating. 3 years later, in 1966, the first phase of the Bloor-Danforth line opened, from Keele to Woodbine, followed in 1968 by extensions to Islington in the west and Warden in the east. The whole line used ceramic tiles, like at Museum and St. George. This line used the same 4 accent colors as the original Yonge line, but it had 5 main tile colors. Even though it's less than a decade and a half newer than the Yonge line, where most stations have lost their original color scheme, most stations on this line still mostly have their original colors. I'm using photos of the current decor. With so many more stations, there were 2 patterns, one from Yonge East and the other west of Yonge. This led to several pairs of stations with the same color scheme, but in each case they were several stops apart and on opposite sides of the line, so they'd be hard to mix up. St. George didn't follow the pattern as it used the same green over green as its University Line station, and the two terminal stations, Islington and Warden, also deviate from the pattern, using more than two colors, but each one does at least use one color that fits the pattern, and there are some similarities between those two stations' designs. A couple of stations no longer fit their patterns due to renovations. Pape should be yellow tiles with green accents, and Dufferin green with black accents. But on a line this long, that's not many that have lost their original color scheme. When this line opened, many stations had only one entrance and no elevator. That's a problem I've mentioned before, such as in my video about Spadina Station. There's a magic link above and a link in the description so you can find it when you finish watching this video. The TTC has been working on fixing these issues, and many stations have somewhat different tiles in the areas that have been modified for this. Here's an example from Broadview Station. The materials in the area near the elevator are similar, but clearly not identical. Christie is a bit of a mess because of an arsonist who set fire to a subway car there in 1976, damaging the finishes in part of the station. Some of the replacement tiles don't match the original peach tiles with green accents. If you've ever had to try to repaint a damaged section of a wall years after it was originally painted, or replace some wallpaper only to find that the pattern is no longer available, you'll understand. There are also several stations like Runnymede where the lettering in the trim strip along the top has been changed from its original color, which matched the main tile color, to white, presumably for improved legibility. The 1968 second phase of the Bloor-Danforth line really marked the end of these patterns. When the Yonge line was extended north to York Mills in 1973 and Finch the year after, with North York Centre added in 1987, the decor neither extended nor matched the pattern. Each station pretty much had its own design. The Spadina line, which opened in 1978, used a different design for each station, often with graphic elements like stripes or curves. In 1980, when the Bloor-Danforth line was extended one stop on each end to Kipling and Kennedy, those stations got designs that didn't really fit with the rest of the line. On the Shepherd line, opened in 2002, most stations have pretty much the same design. Shepherd Yonge is a bit fancier, but the others basically use bare concrete at platform level, with different public art at each station. I did a video about the Shepherd line, links in the usual places. And the extension of the Spadina line into Vaughan in 2017 followed a similar playbook. Bare concrete at platform level, with different public art and distinct above-ground architecture for each station. Over the years, many stations have been renovated at least once, especially where the vitrolite tiles were used on the original Yonge line plus St. Andrew and Osgood. In some cases, there remain traces of the original color pattern in at least some parts of the station, like Dundas still being yellow. In others, it's all gone. But most of Line 2 Bloor-Danforth still remains true to the original color pattern. Bay has two of this unusual feature with tiles that don't match the rest of the station. When the Bloor-Danforth line first opened, there was a 6-month trial of running the whole subway system as an interconnected network, with trains taking 3 different routes. Just like St. George, Bay has 2 levels with stairs and escalators between them, but the trial proved a failure, and Bay Lower went out of service for good only half a year after it opened. On the upper level, the open areas around the stairs were covered up, and metal doors were installed at the top of the stairs and escalators. The original vitrolite tiles contributed to the clean and shiny look of the Toronto subway system. Now, if you're laughing at the notion of the Toronto subway system looking clean and shiny, you'll get a real kick out of this one. Apparently, they used to wash the walls every day and scrub the floors frequently. A converted streetcar went through the system at night picking up garbage. Converting a streetcar would have been made easier by the fact that Toronto subway system uses the same non-standard track gauge, or distance between the rails, as the streetcar system. I talked about that in my video on Toronto gauge. You know where to find the links. About a decade after the subway opened in Toronto, an article in the New York Times compared the cleanliness of a number of subway systems in major cities around the world and found that Toronto and Stockholm were by far the cleanest. The New York Times article even mentioned that Toronto's subway system seemed almost antiseptic to New Yorkers used to their subway system. Well, now that you know about the pattern, perhaps you'll be looking for it the next time you ride the subway. Or maybe, if you're Mr. Spock, you'll be able to calculate where you are while you live long and prosper. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe.